we are that much more successful because there's a trust and a commitment. And when you love somebody, you'll do a little extra. And the commitment piece is like, hey, when you say you're going to do something, just do it. Whether it's convenient, inconvenient, troublesome, and don't look for something in return. The return is that you, as an individual, are part of something bigger than yourself.
Hello, and welcome to the Dragon Tree Podcast, the show where we talk to great communicators about how they do what they do to help others. I'm your host, Chris Hobson, and today we're talking with Mr. Reggie Brooks. Reggie serves as Executive Director of Holtz's Heroes Foundation, which assists former student athletes and other communities in need. Reggie, it's such a pleasure speaking with you today.
Thanks for having me, and looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely. We're delighted to have you. Well, many people in the audience will already be familiar with your amazing football career, Reggie. But to get us started today, would you mind just giving us some background about how you got to become the executive director of Holtz's Heroes Foundation, and basically what inspired you to work with the former Notre Dame Fighting Irish head football coach, Lou Holtz?
Well, I actually was fortunate, one of the fortunate ones that played, under Coach Holtz between 89 and 92. And I guess you got to say 1989 and 1992 now,
Right.
since we're in the 2000s. But I played under Coach Holtz at the University of Notre Dame, then transitioned to the NFL, played a few years there, and then came back to Notre Dame and start working there in the athletic department. And I was seeing a few guys that would come back to campus, former players from various sports, and seeing their struggles, and whether they were struggling mentally, struggling physically, struggling with addiction, various things. And we were not able to, for purposes of legality, really couldn't really help like I thought we should be. So Coach Holtz, had started with a bunch of his former players, started the Holtz's Heroes Foundation. It was the Lou's Lads at that time, and they were looking to kind of ramp things up. And this is around right before COVID hit. And Coach was saying, I don't want a group of guys that's going to come and kind of, I don't want it to be a social activity. I want for us to actually impact lives and really be a support system for former teammates. And I was on the search committee at first, trying to find a good person to take on that role. And then uh, my wife took a position here in Texas and the Dallas Fort Worth area. And I was just thinking, it's like, hey, I could do more, and I could actually be able to, I would be in a position to really assist some of our former athletes and really make an impact, more substantive impact on the lives of the guys that played the sport and played at Notre Dame and was, highly recruited and looked at very favorably, if you will. And so I was like, hey, what do you think if I took on that role? And the other committee members thought it was a good idea, and Coach said that's perfect because again, you got to have a passion for this, because you're seeing guys, and we've had roughly around 18 guys from my era that have passed away in some form or fashion, and they have families, they have wives, children, brothers, sisters, and that's the thing that really we wanted to emphasize is the importance of family and being a support system for those families. And those families live in communities, and so it's just a process. You do be a blessing to one, and it just goes from there.
And you talk about that real extended network, and you characterize it as a family. We've talked before about this, and we'll get a little bit more into that as well as we go on here. And that's actually seems to be just one part of what Holtz's Heroes do. You all do so much for so many different groups. And I was wondering if you could kind of give us an overview of kind of the spectrum of all the things that you all do through Holtz's Hero Foundation.
The main focus is supporting former student athletes that find themselves in um, physical hardship, financial hardship. So we deal with a lot of addiction issues, whether it was alcohol or substance addiction. Guys that may lose a job and need some support for a brief period of time to get back on their feet, and we also help in that area. And then showing their children, their spouses, that you have a support system here too. This is not just for the former player. So expanding on that to a point. And just wanted to point out again, the money that we raise, none of it goes directly to the individual. The money goes to pay them, pay the mortgage until we can get them gainfully employed. It goes to pay for sober living facilities. It goes to for therapists and whatever that physical ailment, guys that run into cancer diagnosis or things along that line. But the money, we find those resources needed for that support, and it goes directly to the service provider. And then we have a scholarship program where if you get into Notre Dame, and we support, right now we're supporting 4 students at Notre Dame that are first generation college students. Coach Holtz is very big on education, the importance of education, and the power of education to further the lives of those individuals. And then we do food drives across the country, because we have guys all across the country. And we work with the Bread of Life Food Drive and the Notre Dame alumni clubs that are spread across the country to do food drives. But our focus is mainly in those off hours where you're not, it's not during the holidays. We focus more on the February, March, April timeframe, and then late summer, early fall, when you don't when the food pantries kind of get low. We work with them by communicating with them and asking what are your needs, and then we go out and solicit to find those items, and again, and we work within the communities that where our guys live.
You That's how you characterize it on the resources I've read, is that you know people come from all over the country and all over the world really to play at Notre Dame football. So it's so interesting how you kind of then turn the lens back on those communities. So you don't just focus on South Bend, Indiana. It seems like you're nationwide, which is really interesting and very reflective of the program there. It sounds like.
Exactly, that was what Notre Dame was built on. Their sports program was built on again, it's barnstorming, that barnstorming era with Newt Rockne, when the Big Ten didn't want Notre Dame. They said, "Well, we'll go find games elsewhere," and we built connections across the country and, like you said, across the world. And it's Notre Dame is a beautiful campus, but Notre Dame is not just a location; it's a spirit. We talk about the spirit of Notre Dame. Well, that spirit is the people that are impacted and the people that make an impact on others, and it requires a selflessness, and that's what makes it so special. And I always hearken to Father Ted Hesburgh and his commitment to doing things the right way, and being a support for others, and not so much focused on yourself.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that selflessness and that team aspect as we go along here, because I know that's something that already was in the DNA of Notre Dame football by the time Coach Lou Holtz got there, and I feel like Coach took it to the next level. And kind of on that subject of Coach, I know that he's famous, having read at least one of his books. I know he's famous for focusing on the fundamentals as much as it is the big game situations. He's always very focused also on the fundamentals. If you could talk about how that approach maybe infuses the work of Holtz's Heroes today.
Well, and again, I came in the fall of '89 or summer of '89 after Notre Dame won the national championship. And one of the things the coach would spend a decent amount of time on, we would spend like 10 minutes just working on the huddle, where you would have to align. We wore Adidas back then, and you had to line. The huddle was a microcosm of the importance of doing the little things the right way. So it was precision was a priority, but it went further than that because it was more about kind of zeroing in mentally. A lot of people focus more on the physical side of the game and then they kind of lose sight of what really sets great teams apart is your ability to focus, be disciplined in your approach. Fundamentals are the key. It's not a it's not a brain surgery, if you will, but when you do the little things the right way, focus in, and really when you get tired, that's when your mental state tends to wane. And the little things that he would have us do, like toes on the back line of the when you're doing your calisthenics, your stripes on stripes when you're in the huddle with the guy next to you. um, it was the little things that he would have us do that set the tone for having success in the broader scheme of the game and of life. So many times, and I think back now, and you don't when you're 18, 19 years old, 20, you're like, what does this have to do with football? But it
Right.
really didn't have anything so much to do with football as it did with life and preparing you for things that are to come. When you have those middle eras, is usually you kind of get tired, you kind of get lazy, you kind of get slack. You're not as attention. You don't make the little things the focus, and you get a little off. But when you focus on the little things, when you're so precise mentally, your body reacts to the mental state of your mind. The more you are focused in mentally, the better you'll execute because you've gone through it. We would do these visualization exercises before every game, and he would take us through offensive play, a defensive play, and a special teams play. The guy next to you is making the block for you. Like for me being a running back, hey, understanding, hey, my footwork has to be precise to prepare the offensive line to make their blocks. And it's the little things that we do, not doing someone else's job, but focusing in so detailed on my job and trusting the guy next to me to do his job. You tend to have a better outcome because football to me is a consummate team sport. It requires 11 guys working in unison and executing at a high level to be successful. And you have to count on the guy next to you. You have to count on the guy behind you. You have to count on the guy that's in front of you. It's those things when you count on that guy, trust that individual, trust that they're going to do what they're supposed to do, and you trust that you're going to do what you're supposed to do, and you're not looking to do someone else's job. Execution is a lot more seamless, and again, those minute details make the difference because you're not doing someone else's job. You can really zero in and focus on what you need to do to be successful, and it permeates throughout the other 10 guys that you're playing with.
That's such great insight, Reggie. As a casual fan, it's like you never know how much goes into all this. So thank you for kind of pulling back the curtain on that. And how does that, you actually alluded to it earlier. You said that like the stakes are very high. You didn't say those words, but essentially you're saying with Holtz's Heroes Foundation, you're helping people cover the mortgage. You're helping people get food. I mean, these are like survival level instances you find yourself in. The stakes are so high. I have to imagine, but please tell me your thought process. For Holtz's Heroes Foundation, it seems like that focus on the fundamentals would really come into play because if you miss one little detail with that, that's somebody's livelihood or that's somebody's meal that they're missing essentially. So how do you feel like that is infused in your everyday work?
Saving lives. It's when you talk about helping someone pay a mortgage, you don't really think of it in that context.
Uh,
It's when, someone calls back and said, I was at my lowest point and someone just, provided a helping hand. And when you think about it on in terms of community and, that support system, I mean, we were built for community. Human beings were built for each other, not for ourselves. And when you are, it's you feel so much better. Like I said, yeah, you score a touchdown, getting accolades and all that good stuff. But the offensive linemen, they don't get a lot of praise and, the glory, but they're just as vital and critical to the team as any of the quarterback, the running back, the receivers that get a lot of the highlight and being looked at. So I always look at that and be thinking about, like, wow, how strong is that individual that they don't look at themselves. They said, hey, I got to do my job so someone else can get the glory. And when you think about life, when you take that selfless mindset to say, hey, I have to do my job so someone else can live, someone else can have an opportunity, not to be, some superstar or this and that, but to be a part of our community, to be a part of the team. And it just getting outside of yourself makes such a difference. And, I've had guys that have come back and said, you saved my life. Think about that. Someone said, you saved my life. That is, that's a lot. That's a lot of pressure. But when you've gone through things with individuals, you don't see them as, you know, this superstar. You see them as a person. You see them as a human being, our failings, our shortcomings. But you're there as a teammate. Some Coach O said, players come and go, but it's the teammate, the true teammates. That's a lifetime. That goes beyond just playing a game over a period of time. That goes into, hey, my brother or sister is struggling. What can we do to help? Not asking, we don't even talk about how much it's going to cost. It's like, what do you need to be successful? And not just in this point in time. It's getting back to that teammate mentality of, we're going to work with you. We're going to walk with you so you are respected. You have that dignity and you have that team support. So no matter what happens, you know, things, think mistakes, people make mistakes, difficult times come. It is so much more, it's so much easier to deal with things when you have a support system. And that is something, again, I think we need to have more of, is building these support systems across the country. And we're a big advocate of partnering with other groups, other foundations, to say, okay, hey, we're here to be a support for you as well, because again, they're struggling, you're part of our community. So step up and be that teammate and help where you can.
I read on your website that it sounds like the former teammates and the family, the extended family we've been talking about, actually had kind of the idea for something like this, and you brought it to Coach Holtz. Is that right? It really, but then he sort of saw the good it could do, and then he agreed to kind of partner with you. Is that right? And kind of take it
We
from
were
there.
able
Is that
to
how
use
did
his
that work?
name. Um, Again, using his name, but again, it goes back to, the things that he would always impress upon us. It's do the right thing, do the best you can, and show people you care. Our mantra is love, trust, and commitment. You know, love each other. And people are like, well, man, that's not very, love is not a very tough word, but it actually is a very powerful word, because when you love somebody, you're going to do, you're going to go above and beyond, because you don't want to let that person down. When you trust somebody, trust in a relationship is key. I've been blessed to be married for over 30 years now,
Congratulations! Wow.
college sweetheart. And it requires a level of trust that says, hey, you're going to do what you're supposed to do, but I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. I'm not going to try to do your job. You're not going to do my job. But when we do our job respectively, we are that much more successful because there's a trust and a commitment. And when you love somebody, you'll do a little extra. And the commitment piece is like, hey, when you say you're going to do something, just do it. Whether it's convenient, inconvenient, troublesome, and don't look for something in return. The return is that you, as an individual, are part of something bigger than yourself. And that is where that true power comes in of, people always talk about they'll run through a wall for their coach. I quite a few of us probably would have run through the wall for coach. He could get you
Right.
in. He was such an inspirational speaker. And, you know, it was funny because he would say the same things over and over. But he got you to believe that if you do this, there's nothing can stop you. And that's kind of, where Holtz's Heroes is now is like, if we continue to be that support system, people will do better. People will get better. Opportunities will come because you're getting outside of yourself, getting outside of your comfort zone, and stepping up and stepping out on faith for someone else.
I just love the parallels between the team and life because when you're younger, you think, oh, that's the flashy team that's the most fun to watch, right? And then as you get older and you stick with it, you're like, you come to this realization at some point that it's the team that's the most consistent and works the hardest day in and day
Exactly.
out. Those are usually the teams that go the distance. And I love how that seems to be like really infused in what you do, which is we're going to help you, but we're not just going to help you for this one time. We're going to make sure you're back on your feet and we're going to stick with you all the way to the end is kind of uh, the feeling I get from Holtz's Heroes. I think it sounds like, and I should say before we go any further, I'm going to put a link. You mentioned about you take donations and things like that. I'll put a link in the show notes for Holtz's Heroes for anyone who's interested in learning more. So I want to make sure we got in that. So part of your work, and we talked about it a little bit, Reggie, off the top, is providing educational and emotional support for former Fighting Irish players who have passed away and or otherwise experiencing hardship. And you talked about that very eloquently earlier. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more. We had talked a little bit off camera about this, and I was really intrigued by the fact you're helping them get back on their feet, but there's also an aspect of wanting to keep the memory alive of the father who would have played for the Fighting Irish and really have the kids still grow up with that feeling that their father was somebody who was very important. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that.
So I was, in like toward the beginning of Coach Holtz's tenure at Notre Dame, and we have what's called the Bobby Satterfield Fund that is a scholarship that helps with the former student athletes, and Bobby Satterfield was a walk-on player, defensive back. He was not a All-American. He was not a starter, but he passed away after the national championship, shortly after the national championship uh, game. And Coach Holtz had said something to the team. You would not have known who Bobby Satterfield was, or he didn't have any status other than he was a teammate. And when guys found out that he had passed, like offensive players, defensive players, it didn't matter. It cuts you to the quick when you lose a teammate. And over the years, we've lost teammates, and two of them just recently. Well, not just recently, but two of them that passed away. Justin Hall and Mirko Jurkovic, two offensive linemen that I played with, passed away. And this upcoming playoff game, the last time Notre Dame played IU, they were the two featured guys on the program. And
Right.
it hit me so hard because would do the radio show with Mirko Jurkovic, knew his son, his wife. They were in South Bend when I was there. That you talking about brotherhood. I love this man because I knew he cared. And when we lost him, it's like we got to keep his memory alive for his son, his daughter, his spouse. And so I still keep in touch with Angie Erkovic, the kids, because they need to know how special this man was. Because they passed away, they were still pretty young. And
Hmm.
then Justin, was out in California. He passed away, but his son, and like I said, one of them's going to Wyoming now. His wife, one of the so it's they need to know how impactful. I was talking about offensive linemen being, again, not getting recognition, being invisible, but it is the most outstanding individuals. They're not looking for accolades. They're just looking to be a part of the team and do their part. And that is special within itself to have that type of, because that's not the mindset of people today. It's like, I want to be seen. And you got guys that are willing to be selfless and make sure, because the only time you hear about offensive linemen is when they hold or they jump offside.
Right, the negative stuff.
It's usually not something good.
That's so
But
true.
when you watch and see the work that they do and the value of what they do, that is something that is you take a pride in, that should be relayed to their children. It's like, hey, understand this. Yeah, you're not going to see a lot of stats and they didn't rush for this many yards or throw for this many yards or catch this many touchdowns, but they were integral in every score that we had, every touchdown made, every field goal made. They were critical to that success. And they went on to have success beyond their time playing football. And just having a reminder of that reminds me of how important it is to keep that legacy alive. Not their legacy of what they did when they played, their legacy of who they are and what they mean to their families and what they mean to us.
We talked about this earlier about your charity work all over the country, and you actually mentioned early on that you do food drives kind of like all year long. So and not just on the holidays, like actually all year long. And you work, and what something that's really struck me is that you work hand in glove with the folks on the ground. So you don't just presume to say, okay, you probably need X, Y, and Z things. You really are trying to be reactive to what the need is in the community. So I was wondering if you could talk about, like, a lot of times we kind of focus on communications on this podcast. So kind of bringing it back to that, how do you raise awareness about, for instance, where you're going to be, how people can get involved, and also how do you effectively communicate, kind of like even after the fact, like what you've done to kind of keep that awareness going?
Well, again, it's having the ties in the community. And
Mm.
with regard to the food drives that we do, we work with Bread Life Food Drive. What I would consider the offensive lineman of the food drive arena is Joe Delaney.
Ah.
Joe Delaney is out of Staten Island, New York, and Notre Dame alum, older guy, just is unassuming as they come, but he does a masterful job of relaying and connecting people and building those consensus within a given community. And so the biggest focus is I can make the connection in the community as to what they need. And that is, we have guys that go to the food bank and identify, okay, what are the needs of this food bank, and then the distribution process. So we understand the impact of the community before we even, you know, embark upon a food drive. It's like, there's no point in gathering food and items and you don't know what the need is in the community. So, and
Mm.
that's why, again, we get back to what that importance of having our guys in these communities across the country and them having an understanding of, okay, here's the person you need to connect with. And again, we work after the fact is more about pictures, but the main emphasis is okay. I collecting the food, and the piece that people tend to forget about is that you got to get that food from one place to the next. So the distribution connection that we have is vital. And again, Joe Delaney has been the rock star in making that happen across the country. He has strong relationships with a lot of the Notre Dame alumni clubs across the country, and he does a masterful job of aligning people with what the needs are in the community, letting us know, and it's okay. Hey, who do we have there? And then getting those boots on the ground. But it starts with a team. You got to have a game plan, and the Bread of Life Food Drive has a great game plan, and it just allows us to plug and play anywhere in the country because we have guys all over the country. We can go in and say, okay, hey, here's so and so, and then we have those people on the boots on the ground, if you will, to say, hey, come and do this, and they show up. And they show up because the individuals that we are connected to, they have capital with them to say, okay, hey, this guy, I can trust them. This person is committed to doing things the right way, and they're going to make sure it gets from point A to point B. And that again goes back to that love, trust, and commitment. It's a labor of love, but you still got to do the fundamentals. You got to have the warehouse to house the food. You got to have the trucks to get it from point A to point B. You got to have the connections in the community. Hey, here's the drop off point, and to be able to communicate that. So it's a lot more that goes into it, but I'm grateful that having the connections around the country, and we can do those simultaneously because we have those networks that are already in place.
It's a lot of love and a lot of trust, but a lot of logistics, it sounds like
Yeah,
as well. So that the fundamentals really come into play. So that's really interesting. You brought it back to that. Coach Holtz has such a laser focus on education. So I actually saw one video where one of the Holtz's heroes was talking about how the program, which I guess you talked about lose lads, and it all sort of seems like it's kind of rolled into the foundation at this point.
hmm
But what really struck me about what this individual was saying is that yes, you're helping an individual's former student athlete kind of fulfill their dreams, but that actually has reverberations down the generations to come. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that as we wind up here about your feeling about how paying it forward. I think at one point people asked Coach Holtz, how can we pay it back? And he said, don't pay it back, pay it forward. So I was wondering if you could talk about that paying forward aspect of what you do.
Well, the paying forward aspect is the importance of the next generation, because again, these principles and values that we espouse are not just meant for us. They're meant to be expressed and encouraged in others. So with the scholarship program, it's not just we don't just okay, here's some scholarship money, you know, good luck and go forth and be prosperous. We maintain a relationship with the scholarship recipients, and we encourage them to say, hey, you have again that support system that we have, because again, once you transition from high school to college to life, job, and so forth, it's important to know that hey, there's always some aspect of relationship that you're going to be in, whether it's employer, employee, coworker, starting a new business, but having a relationship or developing a relationship that goes beyond just, hey, you work here, you work there. It's letting them know that, if you need somebody to talk to beyond work, we're here for you. If you need someone, if you need a reference, but it's hard to give a reference to someone you don't know.
Right.
So it's important that you know and you get to know those individuals that are the recipients of those scholarships. So just like we're impacting the lives of the former players, it permeates through them. So they're going to, hey, man, I got this assistance. Let me do something for somebody else.
Mm.
And the scholarship winners, again, first generation college students, hey, wow, you know, So they're not. It's not just at that given time. It's the impact that they're going to make because they remember what was done for them.
Mhm.
The offering of assistance, getting the scholarship to where again, if they didn't have those scholarship funds, they don't they don't go to a Notre Dame. And just being exposed to something, a greater perception, you know, being exposed to something that you normally haven't been or may not have been, it can be very impactful because it opens your eyes to other communities. It opens your eyes to a broader opportunity. Because again, I came from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I didn't even know where Notre Dame was,
Right.
and but I knew when I got there that it was different, and you see things in a different light, and you see it from a different perspective, and you impact a greater number of people because someone had an impact on you. I mean, part of my recruiting visit, there was somebody that, you know, I was trying to get from one thing to the next. My brother was actually my host, and he
Yeah.
kind of left me hanging. And so it was a grounds crew person that got me to my next meeting. Didn't have any stake in whether I, was successful. I wasn't even didn't know if I was even coming there. But they took the time to assist me, and that always stuck with me. And it said someone that is willing to do something for someone else, even though it has no bearing on what they're doing. And I think that's what that paying it forward is. It's like you're providing something for someone, and it really, it's not going to it's not going to necessarily benefit you, if you will, that they be successful, other than the fact that hey, you just want to see someone get an opportunity, be successful with it, and again, paying it forward so that next person can look to the next group and say, okay, wow, this is something that was done for me. Let me do something for someone else.
Yeah, and that's not something you can fake or buy with money, right? It's
Correct.
just an overall mindset, and Notre Dame to this day, I think, upholds that. Well, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Reggie. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a real pleasure for me. If anyone wants to continue this important conversation or learn more about Holtz's Heroes Foundation, we'll put a link in the notes for the website. Is there any? I know you guys are pretty active on social media. How can they get in touch with you?
It's holtzesheroes.org is the website. And again, my email address is rbrooks@holtzesheroes.org. And, reach out, just like you did, Chris. And when you reach out through the website or directly to me, I'm usually good about getting back with people because again, the more we can get out there, who we are, what we're doing, the more opportunity is to connect with new people that have a desire to do something great. And we're starting to really take on more volunteers to help with the food drives in different parts of the country. So all for that, and just reach out and let me know. Again, if you are in a position to make a donation, please do. Again, the money doesn't go to the individual; it goes to either the scholarship fund, the food drives, are the services that are provided to the former student athlete that finds himself in a hardship position.
Yes, and I can confirm that Reggie is very responsive over email. So don't hesitate if you have the ability to give. Please don't hesitate. And again, we'll put that in the show notes. But thank you so much, Reggie. This has been so wonderful. Thank you for joining us today.
Appreciate it.